Hello and welcome back to our camless edition of A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, where our camera is not working, so this will be audio only. So, the last time here on Bibliobibuli, what happened?
Catelyn found Eddard in the Godswood and told him that King Robert and his wife and all the Lannisters were coming to visit, and that his good friend, Lord Arryn, was dead. And through that we learned that there are the 7 gods and then the old nameless gods, and Catelyn doesn't like the old nameless gods that the Starks worship.
Mm-hmm. And we found out about the trees with the faces on them.
The weirwood trees,
Yes.
with the red sap that looks like blood.
Yes. White bark with red sap.
Another ice and fire kind of image there.
Mm-hmm.
And they freak her out, and she doesn't like them. And it's another connection that the Starks have to, like, the old ways and the old ways. Let's just put it that way. And that Lord Arryn, who is now dead, is also married to Catelyn's sister Lysa.
Yes. And that Eddard and Robert Baratheon grew up in the Eyrie.
Yeah, and that they were like BFFs.
That's right, like brothers.
And that he doesn't like the Lannisters because the Lannisters were a little late in helping them defeat the Mad King Aerys, the second Targaryen.
Who we will, I'm sure, learn more about
later on.
We actually get to learn about a Targaryen in this upcoming chapter of Daenerys.
Yes, my favorite character. Let's read the first Daenerys chapter. Daenerys. Her brother held the gown up for inspection. "This is beauty. Touch it. Go on, caress the fabric." Dany touched it. The cloth was so smooth that it seemed to run through her fingers like water. She could not remember ever wearing anything so soft. It frightened her. She pulled her hand away. "Is it really mine?" "A gift from Magister Illyrio," Viserys said, smiling. Her brother was in a high mood tonight. "The colour will bring out the violet in your eyes, and you shall have gold as well, and jewels of all sorts. Illyrio has promised. Tonight you must look like a princess." A princess, Dany thought. She'd forgotten what that was like. Perhaps she'd never really known. "Why does he give us so much?" she asked. "What does he want from us?" For nigh on half a year they'd lived in the Magister's house, eating his food, pampered by his servants. Dany was 13, old enough to know that such gifts seldom came without their price, even here in the free city of Pentos. "Illyrio's no fool," Viserys said. He was a gaunt young man with nervous hands and a feverish look in his pale lilac eyes. "The Magister knows I will not forget my friends when I come into my throne." Dany said nothing. Magister Illyrio was a dealer in spices, gemstones, dragon bone, and other less savoury things. He had friends in all the 9 free cities, it was said, and even beyond, in vast Dothrak and the fabled lands beside the Jade Sea. It was also said he never had a friend he wouldn't cheerfully sell for the right price. Dany listened to the talk in the streets, and she learned these things, but she knew better than to question her brother when he wove his webs of dream. His anger was like a terrible thing when roused. Viserys called it waking the dragon. Her brother hung the gown beside the door. "Illyrio will send the slaves to bathe you. Be sure you wash off the stink of the stables. Khal Drogo has 1,000 horses. Tonight he looks for a different sort of mount." He studied her critically. "You still slouch. Straighten yourself." He pushed back her shoulder with his hands. "Let them see you have a woman's shape now." His fingers brushed lightly over her budding breasts and tightened on a nipple. "You will not fail me tonight. If you do, it will go hard for you. You don't want to wake the dragon, do you?" His fingers twisted her, the pinch cruelly hard through the rough fabric of her tunic. "Do you?" he repeated. "No," Dany said meekly. Her brother smiled. "Good." He touched her hair almost with affection. "When they write the story of my reign, sweet sister, they will say that it began tonight." When he was gone, Dany went to her window and looked out wistfully on the waters of the bay. The square brick towers of Pentos were black silhouettes outlined against the setting sun. Dany could hear the singing of the red priests as they lit their night fires and the shouts of ragged children playing games beyond the walls of the estate. For a moment she wished she could be out there with them, barefoot and breathless and dressed in tatters, with no past and no future and no feast to attend at Khal Drogo's manse. Somewhere beyond the sunset, across the narrow sea, lay a land of green hills and flowered plains and great rushing rivers, where towers of dark stone rose amidst blue-grey mountains, and armoured knights rode to battle beneath the banners of their lords. The Dothraki called that land Re-Shandali, the land of the Andals. In the Free Cities they talked of Westeros and the Sunset Kingdoms. Her brother had a simpler name. Our land, he called it. The words were like a prayer with him. He said them enough, the gods were sure to hear. Ours by blood right, taken from us by treachery, but ours still, ours forever. You do not steal from the dragon. Oh no, the dragon remembers. And perhaps the dragon did remember, but Dany could not. She'd never seen this land her brother said was theirs, this realm beyond the narrow sea. These places he talked of, Casterly Rock in the Eyrie, High Garden in the Vale of Arryn, Dawn in the Isle of Faces, they were just words to her. Viserys had been a boy of 8 when they fled King's Landing to escape the advancing armies of the usurper, but Daenerys had only been a quickening in her mother's womb. Yet sometimes Dany would picture the way it had been, so often had her brother told her the stories. The midnight flight to Dragonstone, moonlight shimmering on the ship's black sails, her brother Rhaegar battling the usurper in the bloody waters of the Trident and dying for the woman he loved. The sack of King's Landing by ones Viserys called the usurper's dogs, the Lords Lannister and Stark. Princess Elia of Dorne pleading for mercy as Rhaegar's heir was ripped from her breast and murdered before her eyes. The polished skulls of the last dragon staring down sightlessly from the walls of the throne room while the Kingslayer opened father's throat with a golden sword. She'd been born on Dragonstone 9 moons after their flight, while a raging summer storm threatened to rip the island fastness apart. They said the storm was terrible. The Targaryen fleet was smashed while it lay at anchor, and huge stone blocks were ripped from the parapets and sent hurtling into the wild waters of the narrow sea. Her mother had died birthing her, and for that her brother Viserys had never forgiven her. She did not remember Dragonstone either. They'd run again, just before the usurper's brother set sail with his new-built fleet. By then only Dragonstone itself, the ancient seat of their house, had remained of the 7 kingdoms that had once been theirs. It would not remain for long. The garrison had been prepared to sail them to the usurper, but one night Sir Willem Darry and 4 loyal men had broken into the nursery and stolen them both, along with their wet nurse, and set sail under cover of darkness for the safety of the Bravosian coast. She remembered Sir Willem dimly, a great grey bear of a man, half blind, roaring and bellowing orders from his sick-bed. The servants had lived in terror of him, but he'd always been kind to Dany. He called her little princess and sometimes my lady, and his hands were soft as old leather. He never left his bed, though, and the smell of sickness clung to him day and night, a hot, moist, sickly sweet odour. That was when they'd lived in Braavos, in the big house with the red door. Dany had her own room there, with a lemon tree outside her window. After Sir Willem had died, the servants had stolen what little money they'd had left, and soon after they'd been put out of the big house. Dany had cried when the red door closed behind them forever. They'd wandered since then, from Braavos to Myr, from Myr to Tyrosh, and on to Qohor and Volantis and Lys, never staying long in any one place. Her brother would not allow it. The usurper's hired knives were close behind them, he insisted, though Dany had never seen one. At first the magisters and archons and merchant princes were pleased to welcome the last Targaryens to their homes and tables, but as the years passed and the usurper continued to sit on the Iron Throne, doors closed and their lives grew meaner. Years past they had been forced to sell their last few treasures, and now even the coin they'd gotten from Mother's crown had gone. In the alleys and wine-sinks of Pentos they called her brother the Beggar King. Dany did not want to know what they called her. "We will have it all back some day, sweet sister," he would promise her. Sometimes his hands shook when he talked about it. "The jewels and the silks, Dragonstone and King's Landing, the Iron Throne and the 7 Kingdoms, all they've been taken from us, we will have it back." Viserys lived for that day. All that Daenerys wanted back was the big house with the red door, the lemon tree outside her window, the childhood she'd never known. There came a soft knock at her door. "Come," Dany said, turning away from the window. Illyrio's servants entered, bowed, and set about their business. They were slaves, a gift from one of the Magister's many Dothraki friends. There was no slavery in the free city of Pentos. Nonetheless, they were slaves. The old woman, small and grey as a mouse, never said a word, but the girl made up for it. She was Illyrio's favourite, a fair-haired, blue-eyed wench of 16 who chattered constantly as she worked. They filled her bath with hot water brought up from the kitchen and scented it with fragrant oils. The girl pulled the rough cotton tunic over Dany's head and helped her into the tub. The water was scalding hot, but Daenerys did not flinch or cry out. She liked the heat. It made her feel clean. Besides, her brother had often told her that it was never too hot for a Targaryen. "Ours is the house of the dragon," he would say. "There's fire in our blood." The old woman washed her long, silver-pale hair and gently combed out the snags, all in silence. The girl scrubbed her back and her feet and told her how lucky she was. "Drogo is so rich that even his slaves wear golden collars. 100,000 men ride in his khalasar, and his palace in Vastothruk has 200 rooms and doors of solid silver." There was more like that, so much more. What a handsome man the Carl was, so tall and fierce, fearless in battle, the best rider ever to mount a horse, a demon archer. Daenerys said nothing. She'd always assumed that she would wed Viserys when she came of age. For centuries the Targaryens had married brother to sister, since Aegon the Conqueror had taken his sisters to bride. The line must be kept pure, Viserys told her 1,000 times. Theirs was the king's blood, the golden blood of old Valyria, the blood of the dragon. Dragons did not mate with the beasts of the field, and Targaryens did not mingle their blood with that of lesser men. Yet now Viserys schemed to sell her to a stranger, a barbarian. When she was clean, the slaves helped her from the water and towelled her dry. The girl brushed her hair until it shone like molten silver, while the old woman anointed her with the spice-flower perfume of the Dothraki plains, a dab on each wrist, behind her ears, on the tips of her breasts, and one last one, cool on her lips, down there between her legs. They dressed her in the wisps that Magister Illyrio had sent up, and then the gown, a deep plump silk to bring out the violet in her eyes. The girl slid the gilded sandals onto her feet, while the old woman fixed the tiara in her hair, and slid golden bracelets encrusted with amethysts round her wrists. Last of all came the collar, a heavy golden torque, emblazoned with the ancient Valyrian glyphs. "Now you look all a princess," the girl said breathlessly when they were done. Dany glanced at her image in the silver-looking glass that Illyrio had so thoughtfully provided. A princess, she thought, but she remembered what the girl had said, how Khal Drogo was so rich even his slaves wore golden collars. She felt a sudden chill, and goose-flesh pimpled her bare arms. Her brother was waiting in the cool of the entry hall, seated on the edge of the pool, his hands trailing in the water. He rose when she appeared and looked her over critically. "Stand there," he told her. "Turn round. Yes. Good. You look regal," Magister Illyrio said, stepping through an archway. He moved with surprising delicacy for such a massive man. Beneath loose garments of flame-coloured silk, rolls of fat jiggled as he walked. Gemstones glittered on every finger, and this man had oiled his forked yellow beard until it shone like real gold. "May the Lord of Light shower you with blessings on this most fortunate day, Princess Daenerys," the Magister said as he took her hand. He bowed his head, showing a thin glimpse of cracked yellow teeth through the gold of his beard. "She is a vision, Your Grace, a vision," he told her brother. "Drogo will be enraptured." "She's too skinny," Viserys said. His hair, the same silver blonde as hers, had been pulled back tightly behind his head and fastened with a dragon bone brooch. It was a severe look that emphasized the hard, gaunt lines of his face. He rested his hand on the hilt of the sword that Illyrio had lent him and said, "Are you sure Khal Drogo likes his women this young?" "She has had her blood. She is old enough for the Khal," Illyrio told him, not for the first time. "Look at her, that silver gold hair, those purple eyes. She is the blood of old Valyria, no doubt, no doubt. And high-born, daughter of the old king, sister to the new, she cannot fail to entrance our Drogo." When he released her hand, Daenerys found herself trembling. "I suppose," her brother said thoughtfully, "the savages have queer tastes. Boys, horses, sheep." "Best not to suggest this to Khal Drogo," Illyrio said. Anger flashed in her brother's lilac eyes. "Do you take me for a fool?" The Magister bowed slightly. "I take you for a king. Kings lack the caution of common men. My apologies if I have given offence." He turned away and clapped his hands for his bearers. The streets of Pentos were pitch dark when they set out in Illyrio's elaborately carved palanquin. 2 servants went ahead to light their way, carrying ornate oil lanterns with panes of pale blue glass, while a dozen strong men hoisted the poles to their shoulders. It was very warm and close inside behind the curtains. Dany could smell the stench of Illyrio's pallid flesh through his heavy perfumes. Her brother, sprawled out on his pillows beside her, never noticed. His mind was always away across the narrow sea. "We won't need his hull, Khalasar," Viserys said. His fingers toyed with the hilt of his borrowed blade, though Dany knew he never used a sword in earnest. 10,000, that would be enough. I could sweep the 7 kingdoms with 10,000 Dothraki screamers. The realm would rise for its rightful king. Tyrell, Red Wine, Darry, Greyjoy. They have no more love for the usurper than I do. The Dornishmen burn to avenge Elia and her children. And the small folk will be with us. They cry out for their king." He looked at Illyrio anxiously. "They do, don't they?" "They are your people, and they love you well," Magister Illyrio said amiably. "In holdfasts all across the realm, men lift secret toasts to your health, while women sew dragon banners and hide them against the day of your return from across the water." He gave a massive shrug. "Or so my agents tell me." Dany had no agents, no way of knowing what anyone was doing or thinking across the narrow sea, but she mistrusted Illyrio's sweet words as she mistrusted everything about Illyrio. Her brother was nodding eagerly, however. "I shall kill the usurper myself," he promised, who had never killed anyone, "as he killed my brother Rhaegar, and Lannister too, the Kingslayer, for what he did to my father." "That would be most fitting," Magister Illyrio said. Dany saw the smallest hint of a smile playing around his full lips, but his brother did not notice. Nodding, he pushed back a curtain and stared off into the night, and Dany knew he was fighting the Battle of the Trident once again. The 9-towered manse of Khal Drogo sat beside the waters of the bay, its high brick walls overthrown with pale ivy. It had been given to the Khal by the Magisters of Pentos, Illyrio told them. The free cities were always generous with the horse lords. "It is not that we fear these barbarians," Illyrio would explain with a smile. "The Lord of Light would hold our city walls against 1,000,000 Dothraki, or so the Red Priests promise. Yet why take our chances when the friendship comes so cheap?" Their palanquin was stopped at the gate, the curtains pulled roughly back by one of the house guards. He had the copper skin and dark almond eyes of a Dothraki, but his face was hairless, and he wore the spiked bronze cap of the Unsullied. He looked over them coldly. Magister Illyrio growled something to him in the rough Dothraki tongue. The guardsman replied in the same voice, and waved them through the gates. Dany noticed that her brother's hand was clenched tightly around the hilt of the borrowed sword. He looked almost as frightened as she felt. "Insolent eunuch," Viserys muttered as the palanquin lurched up toward the manse. Magister Illyrio's words were honey. "Many important men will be at the feast tonight. Such men have enemies. The Khal must protect his guests, yourself chief among them, your grace. No doubt the usurper would pay well for your head." "Oh, yes," Viserys said darkly. "He has tried, Illyrio, I promise you that. He's hired knives, and they follow us everywhere. I'm the last dragon, and he will not sleep while I live." The palanquin slowed and stopped. The curtains were thrown back, and a slave offered a hand to help Daenerys out. His collar, she noted, was ordinary bronze. Her brother followed, one hand still clenched hard round the sword hilt. It took 2 strong men to get Magister Illyrio back on his feet. Inside the manse the air was heavy with the scent of spices, pinch-fire, and sweet lemon and cinnamon. They were escorted across the entry hall, where a mosaic of coloured glass depicted the doom of Valyria. Oil burned and black iron lanterns all over the walls. Beneath an arch of twining stone leaves a eunuch sang their coming. "Viserys of House Targaryen, 3rd of his name," he called in a high, sweet voice. "King of the Andals and the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the 7 Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm. His sister Daenerys, Stormborn, Princess of Dragonstone. His honourable host Illyrio Mopatis, Magister of the Free City of Bentos." They stepped past the eunuch into a pillared courtyard overgrown in pale ivy. Moonlight painted the leaves in shades of bone and silver as the guests drifted among them. Many were Dothraki horse lords, big men with red-brown skin, their drooping mustachios bound in metal rings, their black hair oiled and braided and hung with bells. Yet among them moved bravos and sellswords from Pentos, Muir, and Tyrosh, a red priest even fatter than Illyrio, hairy men from the port of Ibn, and lords from the Summer Isles with skin as black as ebony. Daenerys looked at them all in wonder, and realized, with a sudden start of fear, that she was the only woman there. Illyrio whispered to them. "Those 3 are Drogo's blood riders there," he said. "By the pillar is Khal Moro with his son Rogoro. The man with the green beard is brother to the Archon of Tyrosh, and the man behind him is Sir Jorah Mormont." The last name caught Daenerys. "A knight?" "No less," Illyrio smiled through his beard. "Anointed with the 7 oils by the High Sempton himself." What is he doing here?" she blurted. "The usurper wanted his head," Illyrio told them. "Some trifling affront. He sold some poachers to a Tyroshi slaver instead of giving them to the Night's Watch. Absurd law. A man should be able to do as he likes with his own chattel." "I shall wish to speak with Sir Jorah before the night is done," her brother said. Dany found herself looking at the knight curiously. He was an older man, past 40 and balding, but still strong and fit. Instead of silks and cottons, he wore wool and leather. His tunic was a dark green, embroidered with the likeness of a black bear standing on 2 legs. She was still looking at this strange man from the homeland that she'd never known, when Magister Illyrio placed a moist hand on her bare shoulder. "Over there, sweet princess," he whispered. "There is the Khal himself." Dany wanted to run and hide, but her brother was looking at her, and if she displeased him she knew she would wake the dragon. Anxiously she turned and looked at the man Viserys hoped would ask to wed her before the night was done. The slave girl had not been far wrong, she thought. Khal Drogo was a head taller than the tallest man in the room, yet somehow light on his feet, as graceful as the panther in Illyrio's menagerie. He was younger than she'd thought, no more than 30. His skin was the colour of polished copper, his thick mustachios bound with gold and bronze rings. "I must go and make my submissions," Magister Illyrio said. "Wait here, I shall bring him to you." Her brother took her by the arm as Illyrio waddled over to the Khal, his fingers squeezing so hard that they hurt. "Do you see that braid, sweet sister?" Drogo's braid was black as midnight and heavy with scented oil, hung with tiny bells that rang softly as he moved. It swung well past his belt, below even than his buttocks, the end of it brushing against the back of his thighs. "You see how long it is?" Viserys said. "When Dothraki are defeated in combat, they cut off their braids in disgrace, so that the world will know their shame. Khal Drogo has never lost a fight. He is Aegon the Dragon Lord come again, and you will be his queen." Dany looked at Khal Drogo. His face was hard and cruel, his eyes as cold and dark as onyx. Her brother hurt her sometimes, when she woke the dragon, but he did not frighten her the way this man frightened her. "I don't want to be his queen," she heard herself say in a small, thin voice. "Please, please, Viserys, I don't want to. I want to go home." "Home?" He kept his voice low, but she could hear the fury in his voice. "How are we going to go home, sweet sister? They took our home from us." He drew her into the shadows, out of sight, his fingers digging into her skin. How are we to go home? He repeated, meaning King's Landing and Dragonstone and all the realm they'd lost. Dany had only meant their rooms in Illyrio's estate. No true home, surely, though all they had, but her brother did not even want to hear that. There was no home there for him. Even the big house with the red door had not been home for him. His fingers dug hard into her arm, demanding an answer. "I don't know," she said at last, her voice breaking. Tears welled in her eyes. "I do," he said sharply. "We go home with an army, sweet sister. With Khal Drogo's army. That is how we go home. And if you must wed him and bed him for that, you will." He smiled at her. "I'd let this whole Khalasar fuck you if need be, sweet sister. All 40,000 men and their horses too, if that's what it took to get my army. Be grateful it's only Drogo. In time you may even learn to like him. Now dry your eyes. Illyrio is bringing him over, and he will not see you crying." Dany turned and saw that it was true. Magister Illyrio, all smiles and bows, was escorting Khal Drogo over to where she stood. She brushed away unfallen tears with the back of her hand. "Smile," Viserys whispered nervously, his hand falling to the hilt of his sword. "And stand up straight. Let him see that you have breasts. Gods know you have little enough as it is." Daenerys smiled and stood up straight.
Your first glimpse at some of the fucked up characters.
Yeah. Your first real glimpse into why this book is not for children.
Yes.
At all.
Jeez, just your own sister. Yeah, I'll let this whole army just run a train on you.
To
or
get what
it's
I want.
Dothraki, so would it be called a stampede? And just
He's creepy with her, too.
Yes, it is very creepy.
That whole thing about how they talk about the Targaryens have married each other for years, I guess. Makes him feel like he has the right to touch her titties? I don't know.
I guess so. Well, I think his whole thing is that when we get to Westeros, you're going to be my queen, so...
Yeah.
I think he's just like...
In his mind, it's already his property.
Yeah,
like
pretty
she's
much.
already his property.
Yeah, I don't think she really has a say in it. It's so weird.
Poor Daenerys.
I know.
She's just being used as a pawn in these men's games.
But I think this whole beginning with Daenerys is a great contrast into what she develops into.
Oh, yeah. I also, reading this through again, this first chapter, is a great setup of, a little taste of the other lands outside of Westeros.
You get to hop across the sea and see what it's like over there.
Yeah. Jorah Mormont.
Yes, Mormont is
Got
mentioned.
to meet him. Also, an Unsullied.
Yes.
Like, right out of the gate. Like,
I know, it's all just little seeds being planted for later on in the story.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, jeez. All the way back in book 1. Wow. Viserys is very obviously consumed by...
He is obsessed and just insane.
Yeah, he's a little not okay.
Yeah.
Like, the years and years of inbreeding may have...
The years and years of inbreeding, and not to give him another excuse for the way he's acting, because he's obviously a disgusting person, but he went through a lot of traumatizing things.
Yeah.
As a childhood. Like, he was there to live through the storming of his castle and his...
Watch his father get murdered.
Yeah.
And his, and his baby... Was it his baby sister or whatever?
Yes.
It would have been his baby sister, right?
She's killed, and then after you get past all
no,
that...
it's Elia's daughter, right? Elia was married to Rhaegar. So it would have been not his...
Oh, it would have been his niece.
His niece got murdered.
Yes.
Yeah. And he was 8 years old.
And then he escapes, and then his mom dies.
Yeah. Giving birth to a sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see how it'd be pretty traumatizing.
And Dany, you get kind of the history of that, at least from the Targaryen side. You get the chapter before, you get the little taste of Mad King Aerys and Eddard and Robert overthrew him, and then you get switch over to the Targaryen side of it, where like they killed our family, and it was awful.
Yeah.
And you hear Dany like tell the story, but you get kind of almost a third person perspective on the story, like a non-emotional version of the story, because she didn't go through it. All she knows is what her brother told her.
Yeah.
And her brother was 8 years old, and it was probably very traumatizing. Mm-hmm. Like, I think Martin makes a point to say, like, he's got nervous hands. He's like, oh, he's got, like, shaky hands. And
yeah, it wasn't like an adult who went through this and can kind of put things into perspective.
Process it, yeah.
Like, 8 years old, and then you got all that time. And no one really teach you how to handle it maturely.
Nope.
And it's just built up, and now, well, this chapter, you see,
yeah,
this is the type of person he is.
Dany is just very much like, well, why can't we just live here and have a life here? And
I know, this
like
seems nice. Like, why do we gotta go back there?
He's just so hell-bent on, I have to get back and I have to take my throne back, without even considering that maybe a life free and unencumbered is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he can't even conceive of that idea. And Dany's 13. Can we just, like, she's 13, and they're like, she's got her period. She's good to go.
I thought she was 14.
She's 13.
13? Okay.
Yeah, they just said in the chapter, they said 13.
Okay.
And they're like, he'll like her.
Yeah,
it's very creepy.
Weird. But at the same time you go back to medieval times, that was kind of the custom.
Yeah,
as soon as you had your period, you were technically old enough to wed, and you were married off to some 50-year-old dude to unite your kingdoms.
Yep, it was all about politics and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just saying, for the modern reader, I'm like, oh, she's 13, that's gross. But it's very much a medieval kind of story, right?
Yeah.
It's that feudal era influence.
Yes. And it's just a very real thing, and it's one of the reasons why I really appreciate George R.R. Martin as a writer, and one of the things that makes his writing unique in the fantasy series or any book series is he does not stray away to controversial topics or really
uncomfortable situations.
He doesn't sugarcoat anything.
No.
He's like, these are real human things that have happened, may still be happening.
Definitely still happen.
He incorporates it into his story.
Yeah. Just because it's unsavory doesn't mean it's not going to be part of his story, and he's not going to portray it for what it really is and how it would really go down. Yeah.
And I think when you first get into this book, it seems very off-putting. Once you get into the later ones, you see how he develops it, and it makes it very real, and it gives it that human element.
Yeah.
For all the good and bad that comes from everything.
Yeah. Daenerys Stormborn.
Mm-hmm.
Princess of...
Such a short name in this first book.
I know, just Daenerys Stormborn, Princess of... What do they say? Princess of the what?
Princess of the House with the Red Door? I don't know.
Oh, Daenerys Stormborn, Princess of Dragonstone.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Then you get to book 5, and it's like half a page just for her name.
Yep. Anyway,
yeah,
we won't go
Just-
there.
yeah.
We just got to meet Dany for the first time and
Yep.
see what kind
and
of...
we got to cringe at her brother.
Yep, cringe at her brother, and just cringe overall at the situation that she's in, because she's not in... She's in a shitty situation.
Yeah.
There's nothing good about her position whatsoever.
Yeah, like, you instantly just feel bad for her.
Like, Jesus.
I don't know whether I feel more bad for her in this chapter, or I'm just like, Viserys, you're just, ugh.
Right, like, do you feel more bad for her, or do you cringe more at her brother? Like, ugh.
And,
yeah.
you know, a lot of people talk about the villains of A Song of Ice and Fire, and how they're developed, and not a lot of people lump him into that, but
No.
he is, like, the first...
Slimeball.
Slimeball / villain we see.
Yeah.
And he carries on that, and I'm like, as bad as he is, it gets worse, and then it gets even more worse.
Yep. Yeah, like, you get this first chapter, and you're like, alright, this guy's a dirtball. He's a scumbag.
Yeah.
And he's gross.
It's like, how could you write a more
Gross character.
hated character?
It's like... And Martin's
just like,
hold my beer.
hold my ale.
Yeah. You just wait, man. Yeah. This is a rough first chapter. I think her next chapter is pretty rough too.
Mm. But coming back and reading how she starts, it makes me appreciate her character more.
Absolutely.
And Khal Drogo, let's just talk about him for a second.
Oh yeah, alright, we can do that for a minute.
Man's ponytail is down to his thighs.
That's impressive.
Right?
That's impressive.
But a lot of people are jealous of his hair.
I'm jealous of his hair. Like, it's been growing that for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's pretty impressive.
He belongs on a Head and Shoulders commercial.
Right? Mane and tail. Mane and tail is perfect.
Yeah.
Our first glimpse of Khal Drogo is that he's this really big, tall, mean warrior dude who apparently has never lost a fight because his hair's down to his thighs.
Yes. Like, how do you maintain that? It's pretty impressive. Especially, you know, you're riding on a horse, you're a nomad.
I think they don't take it out. I think it's
Maybe.
they leave it in.
So
all
do
the
you
time.
think
I don't
it's
know.
So do you think at this point it's more like a really long single dreadlock than a ponytail?
I don't know.
Or a
Well,
braid?
maybe they take it out and like re-braid it and stuff, but I feel like he's got to have help.
I feel like riding on a horse through, you're
dust
getting
and the dirt.
dust, dirt, grass, whatever else in there. Like,
Yeah.
that's not even mentioning like your natural oils and stuff that's going into your hair.
Sweat,
Blood,
from fights.
maybe other bodily fluids.
Yeah,
Who knows?
yeah. I mean,
It's-
he's got to take it out and clean it. Then you gotta, because you gotta keep it clean and not keep it from getting all knotted and stuff. So I bet they groom it somehow. I don't know.
It's gotta
That's
be.
a lot of hair.
Well, he has slaves, so I wonder if he has just like hair slaves. Just take care of his hair.
Probably. I mean, it's like the movie. It's like Tangled with the three little girls hopping back and forth.
Oh yeah.
Braiding Rapunzel's hair, you know?
Khal Drogo is A Song of Ice and Fire Rapunzel.
Yes.
Calpunzel.
Calpunzel. Yeah.
I can't remember what his name is, even though we just read it, but the fat guy merchant. Illyrio, yeah. I can't help but picture him as Slughorn.
I would have thought
It's
about
like-
Slughorn too.
I'm just waiting for him to pull crystallized pineapple out.
I mean, he's enormously fat. He's very obviously got the finer things in
Yes.
life. Yeah, I thought about Slughorn too.
The Slughorn just has a little bit more integrity
Yes.
than him.
Yes.
But they both will basically do whatever they can to
maintain their lifestyle.
and
Yeah. Viserys, my boy! We're going to marry your sister to this horseman.
have some pineapple.
Daddy is crystallized pineapple. It's very good for you.
Oh man, now that I think about it, there's a lot of Slytherins in this book.
Wow.
There's a lot of Slytherins.
Wow. There's a lot of Ravenclaws.
There are a lot of Ravenclaws,
and there's
too.
a lot of Gryffindors.
A lot of Gryffindors.
And there's some Hufflepuffs.
They don't last long.
No, they don't. It's true.
This is not a book for Hufflepuffs. I'm sorry.
No, I don't.
They do not last long in Westeros.
No, they don't. No, they don't. Definitely not. No. Lots of Ravenclaws, lots of Slytherins.
Mm-hmm.
Gryffindors too, but even the Gryffindors don't necessarily last as long either.
maybe we'll do that just as a little crossover for our past Harry Potter viewers. We'll once we meet all the characters, we'll put them into the houses we feel fit.
I already know where I would put Eddard.
Oh, Eddard's a Gryffindor for sure.
Through and through.
Mm-hmm.
It's a solid Gryffindor.
Viserion's definitely...
Viserys.
Yeah, okay.
Keep it together. Gotta keep our characters together.
We haven't met Viserion yet.
No, we have not met Viserion
Viserys is definitely Slytherin.
Yeah.
Daenerys... I might put Daenerys as Gryffindor.
See, I think she's a little Slytherin.
She's hard to tell, but I think...
I think she's got some big Slytherin vibes.
She's a bit like Harry. I think she could go either way. She definitely does have Slytherin tendencies, but a lot of the stuff she does is for the right reasons.
Yeah, but Slytherins do that too. Slytherin doesn't automatically mean bad guy.
But Slytherin does it for themselves. She does a lot of stuff for other people.
I think she does a lot of it for herself, though.
But she does a lot for other people, too. So that's what I'm saying. It's hard to judge from what she does.
I think it's an argument we have to have when we know more about her, but I have my reasons for why I think a lot of what she does is self-motivated. I know you couldn't see us this time, but you could at least still listen to us, and we'll just keep putting out videos until we get our new camera.
Yes, until you can see our beautiful faces again.
So we'll definitely keep putting out content, and you can definitely keep listening.
Until then, like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time to learn more about Eddard.